The gears in my head hadn't stopped, still trying to crunch together something important. I knew it had to be important, but as Twain and I reached the entrance to the Muddy River Tavern, I couldn't imagine what it was. Really? You want me to work with a bunch of steel assholes? Again! One time was bad enough. Twain shook his head as we walked into the bar. The both of us stopped as a commotion from the Patriots now held our attention. I found myself looking at an odd pair of ponies who were dressed in old security guard outfits, making them Isaac's co-workers, if I were to guess. Despite their shouting voices, he wore a smile on his muzzle as he rubbed his neck with his forehoof. How could you let another one get away? The small crimson mare yelled at him, had a temper that matched the fiery bright red mane that adorned her. With you either catching or losing them all, we're never going to work off our debt at this rate. With as young as she was, I was surprised to see her working someplace like this. Now, Miss Slayer, I'm not the only one who couldn't pay for gouging herself. Isaac sat down and looked up at me, giving me a nod before returning his attention to the young mare. You agreed to work off your debt, and Mr. Stew allowed you to do so by making the city a better place. Yeah. She waved her hoof back at him. The sooner we pay it back, the sooner the big lug and I can quit wasting our time here and get back to what we do best. Eating ponies out of house and home? A large, light blue stallion with a blonde mane, who up till now had just been observing the argument, finally put in a thought. The only problem was that from the way his statement sounded, he didn't seem to be the sharpest tool in the shed. However, that antique sword he carried by his side looked as sharp as any well-made blade I'd seen. Shut it, you idiot! I couldn't help but look on in confusion as the mare smashed the big guy in the head with her hoof. Now, Zelos, why don't you be a pal and let me mark this down as our win? What do you say? I would say... I could already tell he was going to say, by the look of elation across his face, that you're going to need to be as fast as me if you want to even think of considering that. She hung her head with a groan. But you're freakishly fast! How the hell do you even do it? Isaac smiled and wagged his hoof at her. Now that is a secret. She face-hoofed hard and growled in anger, her horn glowing brightly before the blue stallion put a hoof on her shoulder. She stopped and looked up to him, as he did nothing but glare towards the other door across the room. The angry mare sighed and nodded, turning from Isaac towards this exit. Come on, Lightsword. It's Tesla and Zell's shift in a few. Let's go wake them up. Longbow pushed past them as they left, smiling as she saw me, but pausing for a moment as she saw Twain. Hey, what's he doing here? She eyed him over suspiciously, getting a grunt from him. I'll be at the bar. Come sit when you're done. He brushed past Isaac as he walked forward, letting Isaac take his place next to me. Twain has agreed to join your team for the bridge assault. I watched her process the information with surprising calmness. I'd expected her to argue or interject about how she doesn't need more protection, or that she doesn't trust some pony like him. I'll make sure he's briefed on what to do, which should be simple, seeing as I borrowed the bridge blueprints from the Manhattan Museum curator at the lower levels. Maple and the others in his squad are each being divided into team leaders, for Team 1 and Team 2 get in position. She shook her head and dropped her gaze to the floor. I just hope we have enough. Assaulting an Scorched Defender requires 10 to 1 odds, and we don't even... I put up a hoof to her muzzle and gave her a nod. We will have enough. We need to, if there's any hope of killing 42. If there's anything I can do to help, just ask. Isaac chimed in, surprising the hell out of me. No, I won't ask you to risk your... The gears in my head ground for a moment, sending a spike of pain through my head. This caused enough of a pause in my brain that I actually heard what I was about to say. This is it. The final assault against 42. We needed as many ponies as we could get, and if he offered, I was going to take him up on it. Fuck. We can't afford not to have you with us. You can go with my team. Longbow pushed my hoof from her slowly. The 2 main groups above will probably funnel them down to us, so we'll need all the reinforcements we can get. Then you might be interested in using my boat as well. As he spoke, my ear picked up something that in Isaac's voice that I hadn't heard from him yet. A sense of purpose. He sounded like it was his duty to help, and that he was grateful he could. Since when do you have a boat? I looked to him as I rubbed at my aching head. I told you. None were accepting of my presence, so I traded the room they signed over to me for a fairly decent fishing vessel. Isaac smiled. He told me a ship like that goes for quite a few caps in its condition, but it was worth it for a rent-free room in the city. I think it was a fairly decent trade. I looked over to Longbow, who looked just as confused. She shrugged and smirked. Well, that'll certainly be better than my original plan to get the group over. Oh? And what was that going to be? Now she brought it up, I'm not quite sure how they were going to assault the lower-level sections in the first place. Well, with such little time left, I was going to have Frosted Cakes steal us one. She looked up at me with a hint of guilt in her eyes. Longbow had surprised me several times on our journey, but stealing I had thought completely out of the question for her. Though I would have thought the same thing, because if it brings down 42, anything's worth it, right? She gave me a nervous smile. I love that the two of us think alike. Hey, errand boy! The annoyed voice of Caliper called out behind me. I thought I told you to grab my figure, not drink the night away. While that was true, I did manage to get a bit off track. I had still managed to get it and planned to head back down. Didn't I? It's these fucking gears turning in my head that have gotten my mind all jumbled up. Sorry. I turned around to see her hobbling towards me with a bandage wrapping around her forehoof. You all right there? Fucking terminal casing gave me a good zap. She shook her hoof as I reached into my saddlebags and hoofed out the small figure, taking a moment to really look at it. Yeah. I swear that casing was the only reason terminals never fail. Their energy absorption rate is phenomenal. I felt compelled to read the words inscribed along the base, speaking without really knowing why I had to. Awareness. It was under E. With that, the floodgates of my mind opened, as the gears spurred out more than I thought they could. The research station in the middle of the forest, the busted terminal in the pond cave, 42's actual reason for being there, Project Golem's final audio log, and Pinky's riddle to me now fit all neatly together. It's the only place you can normally go to find it. Under E. What are you blathering about now? Caliper reached out and snatched the statue from my hoof. I couldn't fight the wide grin across my muzzle, as I realized how simple it had all been. I had always heard about how Twilight Sparkle had been the most intelligent of the Ministry Mayors. So who would think she'd hide the pond someplace as simple as that? 42 couldn't find it when she was there. She needed me to figure it out for her. And if Twilight can outsmart her, then 42 wasn't perfect. And that means, however small, that there's still a chance we can do this. Nothing. I shooed her away, pushing her from the back of my mind as I turned to Longbow. How long do we have till the other rangers arrive? Longbow thought for a moment. Well, I spent the last 15 minutes looking for you, and taking into account the amount of average time it would take to get here. She waved her hoof in the air, doing the math in her head. I'd say we've got about just an hour. What? I spat out in shock. This wasn't the plan at all. They were supposed to get here tomorrow. And every time you've planned something, 42's been expecting it. So I pushed up the plans when I got back to base. She smiled as I blinked, sitting there in awe. It was brilliant in both inception and execution. She'll never see this coming. I was so happy that I could kiss her. Unfortunately, as I went to hug her, she stopped me. But, in case you didn't realize this, it means you have to get ready to go now. I'll get Isaac and that asshole back there ready. but Maple is already waiting for you at the dock. I love you. I really wish that I had more time to spend with her. Wait, what about Skyline? Longbow looked puzzled at my question. She's at Tenpone with Carlotta. If she returns, can you make sure she knows where I am? She gave a nod in response, and leaned in, giving the end of my muzzle a soft kiss before turning towards Twain. Oh, wait for a moment. Longbow's eyes brightened, looking back to me as her horn glowed, pulling her Gauss pistol from her saddlebags. I won't need it when I'm in my armor. It only has a few shots left, but I hope you won't have to use them. Thank you. I took the weapon into my hooves, feeling grateful for all she's done for me. I'll make sure not to waste the shots. Turning, I held my hoof out to Isaac and smiled to him, happy when he took my hoof and gave it a firm shake. See you after the fight. Likewise. Please, be safe. He offered as he let go and followed after Longbow. I made my way back down to the corridor, almost flying down the stairs that led to the marketplace in a mad rush to find supplies. Safety's firearms was my first stop. I needed to see what ammo I could pick up there, then, unfortunately, needed to get up to Seymour's again. I wasn't sure I'd seen a few potions on her shelves, and I'm sure those would be quite useful. The gears in my head spun up again, throwing out the image of the dash vials sitting there. I bit my lip lightly as I thought. What was the harm in getting them? If I needed them to kill 42, addiction is a better alternative to dying. I burst past a few groups of ponies just hanging around the entrance to the market, pushing myself to get this done as quickly as possible. I skid to a stop in front of a very surprised safety catch, who looked unsure if he should grab a gun to sell me or use it on me. Whoa there, buddy. Where's the fire? He gave a nervous smile, his right foreleg twitching as I knew it was curled around the barrel of a gun behind his counter. I need ammo, and it's got to be quick. I stopped and thought what I would need. I only had Heartstopper, the twins, and now Longbow's Gauss pistol. Preferably 12-gauge, 9mm, and 2mm Gauss. I was pretty much cleaned out earlier today, but I think... He looked around quickly, trotting to the back of his stall and shuffling through a few boxes as he spoke. Ha! I knew I had some left. He brought the box over, of 12-gauge shotgun shells, with a smile. Here you are. That'll be 35 caps. Sure, but is that all you got? This was going to be a very short fight if it came down to it. I know I still had at least a mag's worth for the twins, but this was going to have to be enough. Like I said, I got cleaned out earlier today. Sorry. He actually had sorrow in his words, but I knew from experience that it was more from the fact that he didn't have more to sell me. I reached into my bags and counted out the assorted caps, hooving them over to him before dragging the shotgun shells into my bag. Pleasure doing business. I didn't bother giving him a good day in return, instead pushing myself off and galloping towards Miss Leake's stall. She was still in the chair, but this time I could see an empty dash inhaler in her hoof. I fucking knew she was using her own shit, but I really hope that she is still composed enough to make a fair sale. Her tipping her head up at me as I approached was a good sign that she was at least still conscious. I rushed past her, biting down on the 2 simple health potions she had on the shelf, and wrapped my fetlock around the box of dash that I assumed no longer held the amount I saw earlier. I dumped them on the counter in front of me, and danced on my hooves, eager to keep moving. Huh? What? Her words were disorderly and slurred. I knew she was crashing from the drug and wasn't going to last much longer, in all probability. You want my jet? All of it. How much? This was going to take too long, and I don't even think she'd make it through a negotiation if she kept the price too high. Well, let's see. She rubbed her chin softly and squinted at the chair, plastic box that they sat in. For all these? Was she going infuriating slow just because she knew I was in a hurry? Or did the universe just hate me this much this month that she literally took this long to process a single thought? Words! I rolled my forehoof, hoping she would get the hint to go faster. Speak words, old mare! 20 caps. She spoke so slowly I knew she had to be crazy to charge that little for them. Each. There was the catch. There was no way I could afford that right now, but there is no way I'm going into battle like this without being completely prepared. For the first time in my life, I was going to resort to something, as a merchant, I swore I would never do. Not to say that might amount to, as the rest of my life was worth ruining my merchant's reputation is with theft, but the better off I am at this point, the more lives might be saved in the long run. That makes sense, right? Great! I shouted, pulling my money pouch from my bag and throwing it at her. The bag struck her in the muzzle and split. I'm throwing my meager amount of caps all over the floor as I scooped the supplies into my bags. If I had known I was just going to steal, I probably would have grabbed more from the shelves. There was no time for regrets now. I didn't give her any time to come to her senses before I was gone. My hoofs slammed against the old metal flooring and grating that made up the stairwells back down to the docks, groaning precariously as I thundered down flight after flight. The thought that I might be running straight towards my doom flashed through my mind, but I did my best to shove the thoughts as far back as I could. I owed it to my family and friends to at least live long enough to kill 42 and try to give reparations for the ones that my own hooves were responsible for getting killed. I threw my weight into the ground level access hatch, slamming it open as I startled Maple, who reflexively moved to bite down on his weapon bit that he forgot was still in his unworn helmet. I panted heavily as I did my best to not look too winded. Going up wasn't so bad, sure, but regulating my balance when working my way down hastily took a lot more work than I thought it would. The darkened skies made the air mercifully cold, helping my now aching joints feel a bit better as I stood out in the open. Goddess's backlash! Slow down. He visibly relaxed as I took notice of the other paladins who were standing around. We're just going over our final checks, as the rest of the weapons you sold us is divided up and loaded onto the barges. We should really be ready to depart for the shore in the next 10 minutes or so. You mean... I panted heavily as he looked at me curiously. I had time before we went? My legs gave out as I realized I rushed down here for nothing. Well, at the very least, I might take Miss Leek a bit to realize I had ripped her off, and even longer to report me to the guards for it. The cold ground below me felt good on my coat. The idea of taking a small nap while I waited, sounding more and more like a good idea by the moment. I shook my head and focused myself back to my legs, knowing that if I slept I might not wake up in time for the fight. I can't risk my coordination being off for this. Not by one bit. I suggest you wait on the barge. I will join you soon as I go over the plan with them. Maple shrugged and pointed a hoof to the barge we took over there. My guess was that once they got the barge back over, they would use the tug itself to bring the others to the other end of the bridge. I don't know which side we would be assaulting from, but either way was sure to be a death trap if 42 would keep her usual tricks. I did as I was asked, trotting my way to the bridge and taking my place in front of the same window I had looked out on the way here. I listened for the first few minutes to the sounds of waves made against the shore, letting it relax me slightly. There came a point when the silence reminded me of how alone I was. I thought it best to get some noise going, so my thoughts didn't drift anywhere I didn't want them to. Knowing that we still had a bit of time to kill, I lifted my pip-buck, swapped out the SATS fuse over to the radio. I'd have to swap it back, but right now I just wanted to clear my mind. With a quick click, the radio started up and thought it was at the end of the song. I enjoyed the sad, slow tunes of Sweetie Belle that flowed through the air. Good evening, Wastelanders. It's me, your friendly radio DJ Pone 3, coming at you from Manhattan on this gloomy and depressing evening. I'd like to start tonight's update with a bit of alarming news coming over from the settlement of Red Wing. 42 couldn't be in Red Wing, right? She wanted to fight at the bridge, and there's no way she could miss out on getting the drop on me. Maybe something else? Maybe it was just a mine collapse, or maybe Pariah was killed by a manticore or something. It looks like a whole army of raiders has descended upon the poor town, and the only thing standing between them and complete annihilation is their town walls. I'm also getting reports that a large mechanical monster started fighting the raiders as well, but who knows if it will stop with them, or continue by slaughtering Redwing. Will it fall to the 1,000-pony siege force? Who knows, kiddos? 1,000 fucking raiders! 42 must have gathered all the gangs from here to Baltimore just for that one assault. Even if we killed 42 in the next hour and turned our sights on saving Redwing, we'd get there a day from now, and there'd be no way the walls were going to last that long. At least Pink and Bit were there to help them, and I'm sure their appearance is the only reason the walls have lasted this long in the first place. In less other depressing news, Ten Pony Tower was freed from its own gangers' threat yesterday by none other than our beloved Crusaders. Now, I know what you all ponies out there are saying. Why do they keep fighting like this for us? Well, as it turns out, my little ponies, I have an answer for you, and it's simpler than you think. It's because they believe in the wasteland. They believe in the good that not just us ponies can do, but all who live in our time can accomplish if we work together against... The Pip-Buck shot a spark out of its side and went dark. The pink readout on my eye fuzzed away quickly and left me wondering what just happened. I looked down at it again, shaking and tapping the screen to see if it was just a loose connection, but it seemed like it was going to stay dead, which meant it was going to be a lot worse than just bad wiring. I was going to be completely vulnerable in this fight if I didn't restart it by the time the bullets started flying. All right, let's go. That bitch isn't going to kill herself. Maple shouted just before the barge lurched ever so slightly. This was it. No going back from here. How is it, despite my best efforts to be prepared for this, I'm walking in with little more than a hope and a prayer that we can do this? I was slightly disappointed when the barge had crossed the other side of the harbor, where Maple, Frosted Cakes, and I disembarked with a few other paladins, quickly making our way through the dark streets towards the east on-ramp of the bridge. I had hoped to use the Marauder as a quick means to get up there, but from the amount of rubble on this side of the bay, most of it would have made car travel impossible. Maple gave a grunt as a signal to turn, steering us all towards an old shipping warehouse that sat next to the on-ramp. As we entered, the soft lanterns attached to the hooded acolytes helped me see that the 30 or so ponies we had been hard at work repairing the armor of the 11 other paladins standing before us. One of them stepped forward as we entered, throwing up a quick salute to Maple. Sir, the scouts report that the bridge truss closest to us has been reinforced, and is most likely being manned by raiders at the moment. His glance drifted to me for a moment, where a look of horror and disgust washed across his expression, just enough so that I could see it. The pink mare has also been seen at various points, but our snipers haven't been able to get a clear shot. Thank you, Initiate. Remind them not to engage in a fight unless we have started taking fire. Maple motioned to the young stallion to go as he looked back to me, cocking his eyebrow. Would you like to borrow some armor? You're pretty much going in naked now that your Pip-Buck is dead. It was funny. He had noticed it right off the bat when we were talking, but he still didn't get that 42 was playing a game, and that she wanted me alive. I'll be fine. Trust me. Just make sure to punch a hole in their defenses to get me inside. Once I'm in, it'll be just me and her. You understand? That's suicide. You've seen what she can do. He shook his head. No. It is up to me to stop her, and any pony who steps in will only serve as the means of leverage against me. It was my fight, and they had already risked enough. I just need you to open up a clear path for me and keep the raiders at bay. Think you can do that? My ears were met by a sound of creaking wood, drawing my attention to a hooded pony who was prying open a familiar-looking box. Inside sat the pink missiles that I had claimed from under the farmhouse, and upon seeing them again, my curiosity as to what they did was rekindled. Well, I won't have long to wait to find out, I guess. Easy enough. He paused for a moment before he put his helmet back on. We will be there if you call for aid. We agreed to help you, but I know that this mayor is capable of just as you do. We are all ready to give our lives. It means keeping that thing from living any longer. I understand. I nodded as his helmet gave a hiss as it sealed to him. And thank you, Maple, for everything you and your squad have done. I held my hoof out, receiving a firm handshake from him in return. Don't thank me just yet. He cut himself off, canting his head as he held a hoof up in an attempt to keep me silent. Looks like the team radioed in that they have started across the bridge. So, it's time to get this thing started. He looked back to the other paladins, who stiffened up and stood at attention. Listen up! We are to cause enough of a diversion to both allow the tertiary team to get into position and to break a hole in their line big enough to get backlash here inside. He paused to the paladins, each nodded in confirmation. All right, let's get moving. As we trot, part of me was glad that Skye wasn't here. I hoped that she had simply lost track of time and spent an extra few minutes with Carlotta. As much as I didn't want to break the promise I'd made to her after all this started, I didn't want her to come with me. 42 would kill her. I knew this. And if that happened, there was no way I could maintain enough focus to keep myself from getting killed by her as well. No, it was better this way. The dark streets of Manhattan were quiet, with not even the wind anymore to dampen the loud stomps of the armored ponies following behind me. It was amazing how the Rangers could just follow orders, knowing that they could be doing so in futility. It was something I hadn't really thought about much before last month, thinking that all the Rangers did was bully wastelanders around on a whim. What I had learned was very different. They were no different from any other pony in the wastes, simply scared and doing what they think is best for their own survival. Yes, somewhat Maple stood out in a negative light, but I know in time he could change his ways. This thought ran through my mind again and again as we made our way up to the overpass, helping to distract me from the two steel monoliths rising to the sky before me. Hastily patched up sections of the tower glowed softly as the numerous fires keeping the interior lit, while quick shadows darted around as we approached. The truss that ran between the towers at the top had a large stack constructed on top of it, and was something that I hadn't remembered seeing it before. As we approached, the shack lit up like a cage, and I immediately knew why I hadn't remembered it. 42 was all about theatrics, of course. Even from this far, I could see when 42 walked forward onto the stage, and as my eye burned, I knew she was staring right at me. The fact that she wasn't at Red Wing meant that they might actually stand a chance to win their fight, but the fact that she was up on that stage so readily meant that she knew we were coming. I just hope that she didn't assume Longbow had a team coming from below. The loud report of a large caliber rifle filled the night air, which filled the stage with smoke. No, not smoke. The stage was surrounded by some sort of bullet-resistant glass, and it had simply cracked in front of where 42 stood. Shit. I told them to wait. Mabel's voice didn't come as a surprise. It was a good attempt, but 42 wouldn't make a move like that without protection. Well, looks like. He was interrupted as a sharp screech of feedback came across the air, making me fold my ears down and cringe. Well, good evening, fillies and gentle colts. Welcome to the feature event of the Heavyweight Championship of the World. 42's voice boomed from whatever sound system she had hooked up to the bridge, carrying across the silent city in eerie echoes. The echoes were soon followed by the cheers and excited shouts of her followers. Their taunts and whistles reminded me that she still had a sizable force inside the fortified structure. As we made our way up the road, I could see that all the rusting hulks of skykars and buses had been pushed together as a makeshift wall. Fans, with us tonight is truly one of the greats. Coming from the east side, the master of disaster, the king of sting, the one, the only, Backlash. A spotlight from just under the stage flickered on and swung down, forcing me to squint as it highlighted me. I ignored the ominous shouts and boos that came from the raiders, pushing forward and stopping only once I was 30 or so feet from the car wall. As the voices calmed down, I took a chance to buy us a bit more time to get into position. "Give it up, 42!" I shouted, not even sure she could hear me. "You want this to be our final fight? Then let's have it fair. 1-on-1. You and me. Right now." If I could get her in the open, even if she took me down, I knew that Maple would hold up his end of the bargain. "What? I never said it would be our final fight. I specifically remember saying there would be an ultimate showdown." Her voice came over the speakers with a squeak of delight. "And what a turnout! I can't wait to see who comes out on top. Though, I do have to ask my little soon-to-be cupcakes where the hell my fireworks are." "Longbow, we're a bit busy up here." Maple spoke up next to me, ripping my attention away from 42 with news of Longbow. "Who cares if there are ponies under the roadway? Unless it's the whole base." He paused and went quiet, as I swear I could hear Longbow yelling at him through his helmet. His body went rigid for a moment, as he put a hoof to his ear. "They have what with them?" "Ah, I guess the surprise is ruined. Might as well ring the bell." 42 spoke with a sinister tone that sent a shiver down the back of my neck. "Let's see how many rounds you Rangers can last in the ring." There was a soft beep that came through the speakers, which preceded a thing that I hadn't considered 42 even doing. She was going to destroy the bridge. Ba-boom! The colorful blast of balefire energy lit up the night behind us, and on the other side of the bridge from us, the force of the blasts throwing a few of us lucky to be far up our hooves. The ringing in my ears wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but as it turned out, it was less of a blessing than I thought, as I could hear the sharp snaps and squeals of the bridge's roadway as it started to collapse. The screams of the Rangers who fell into the water below haunted me as I got back to my hooves on the cracking and quickly disintegrating road. Gunfire erupted from both sides as debris from the roadway pushed into the air from the blast and rained down from the sky. I yelped as I jumped when a sizable chunk of concrete slammed down beside me, the slowly tilting roadway making me lose my balance when I landed up and ended up rolling back and onto my belly. I started to slide back, flailing my rear hooves until one of them slid into a gap just big enough for it to fit into. The sharp wires that lay just under the asphalt cut into my legs as I kept my head out of the gunfire. I yelped as half a Ranger slammed down in front of me, the smoldering corpse coating me with blood as I tried to use it as a point of leverage to pull myself up. Instead, I ended up pulling it hard enough it slid down the shifting roadway and over the edge, dropping into the water below where I would shortly be going if I couldn't find a way to move up. This had become a complete nightmare. I thought we'd been prepared, that we had the advantage. Instead, I had led them into a slaughter. Once again, I had failed the wasteland, and once again, I was slowly pulled my way up the roadway. I was sure I was going to pay for it with my life.